Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm. Each week, our hosts will be interviewing local, regional, and national business leaders to give you an inside peek into how they lead their business to success in the ever-competitive business climate.
Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm. Today, I have a very special guest. Jeff Patterson has over 36 years of experience practicing and teaching the meditative and martial arts as the founder of Northwest Fighting Arts in Portland Tai Chi Academy, and the Yielding Warrior, where he emphasizes the transformative power of meditative and martial arts practices, particularly the yielding concept. He has published 2 books and hundreds on instructional videos, founder of the Yielding Warrior online program, and he has worked with thousands of students from around the world. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. Before we get into what you do now, this is a show that is focused on entrepreneurs, so I ask everybody this question. Where did you get the entrepreneurial spirit from? Are you from a family of entrepreneurs? Are you the first? Where does that come from?
You know, I came up in pretty modest from modest means, and I always had this belief as a kid that I was going to do something important. And maybe that's from my grandpa kind of always instilling that in my head and telling me that I could do whatever I wanted. And when I was in college, I was the first kid in my whole extended family to go through school. I got 2 degrees in less than 4 years. My whole family thought I was going to go out and get a big, important job doing something. Well, I had a boxing coach back then who was also my first meditation coach. And he told me that I should try to create a life instead of making a living. And that always stuck with me. And I remember telling myself back then when I graduated from school, you know, I could go get a job and do a lot better off financially doing something that maybe I'm not too stoked on, or I could follow my passion and, you know, just create the life that I want. And that's kind of the major turning point for me, was getting that piece of advice from him.
What a beautiful piece of advice. Yeah, now it brought you here. So when he introduced you to meditation, I assume that was the guy that did it. And then what helped you keep following through with that and just continuing to do that throughout your life?
Well, you know, he originally introduced me to meditation, telling me that it would help me with my boxing, and that was, I kind of had an ulterior motive there, if you will, and I wasn't really interested. I thought that, you know, Tai Chi was for old people in the park. I didn't think it was going to help me with my boxing at the time. I didn't really understand it, and I started doing the practice. Well, I did it diligently because I wanted to do everything he told me I should be doing, because I had a lot of respect for him.
Mm-hmm.
For a while, I wasn't really fully committed. Even though I was doing it every day, my mind and my heart wasn't really in it. And it wasn't for about, I don't know, 6 or 7 months of practicing daily until I had an experience one morning where, you know, I had this hour and a half ritual that I did every morning, and I went down to the basement to train. I started practicing, and I looked up at the clock, and an hour and a half had gone by, and it felt like 15 minutes. And I had this euphoric feeling. And from that point on, I was hooked. And then slowly after that, I started changing my main focus from boxing into the meditative arts and studying the philosophy behind it, and really kind of going down that rabbit hole. And that's kind of was a major turning point in my own personal practice.
A lot of people find the idea of meditation mysterious, right? And rightly so. Like there's a lot of Hollywoodification of the whole thing. I know I was one of those people, and once I got into it, it was something vastly different than I even imagined. Maybe we could start at the top of what are the 3 types of meditation?
Well, I break down meditation into kind of 3 practice categories,
Okay.
and we have ritual practices, active practices, and philosophical practices.
Mm.
Ritual practices can be anything from sitting practices, standing meditation, a movement practice like Tai Chi or Qigong or yoga, something where we're taking time out of our day to focus on this specific form of breath work or movement or whatever it is we're doing, and trying to just turn our focus inward. Oftentimes the meditative arts are called the internal arts, and they're called that for a reason, in that it's about developing a deeper level of feeling inside of ourselves so we can stay more connected to who we truly are. And then the second category is what I call active or reset practices. And, these are very valuable and important, and they're great because you can do them when you're walking down the street or standing in line at the grocery store, and they can be in as little as 60 seconds or 2 minutes. And the idea is even if you have a disciplined ritual practice and you're doing a half an hour or an hour a day, whatever that is, maybe you feel a great sense of peace and relaxation during that session. But if the rest of the day you're stressed and overwhelmed, it really doesn't resonate. So we use these active practices throughout the day to help us stay in that peaceful state, that state of awareness where we're connected to our physiology, our mental thoughts, and our emotional well-being. So we're starting to live the lifestyle. And that's the whole idea behind meditation, is that it's meant to be a way of life and not a hobby that we do once in a while. And then the third category is the philosophical side of the training. And this can be both used in the ritual practices as well as the active practices. And when you combine these three things and create an evolving life practice, you can really get a lot of benefits from the meditative arts.
Since we're using that word quite a bit on this particular episode, obviously, the primary reason I had you on the show, like I was saying before, was meditation and talking about it with the audience. Uh, I'm curious if you have read the book Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, or at least familiar with it.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, how has that played into everything that you do?
Well, I think studying philosophy is a very valuable part of any meditation journey. And, within the meditative arts, I break it down into five kind of categories of practice. There's the athletic side of the practice, or the performance side, that helps you be more in tune with the body to improve your athletic performance. Many athletes these days at the professional level are turning to the meditative arts because there's so many benefits to help improve their game. Then we have the therapeutic side of the practice for longevity and healthy body and awareness. There's the medical side of the practice, the philosophical side, and then also the meditative or spiritual side. And oftentimes people associate meditation with solely with the kind of meditative or spiritual side, but really there's many different paths you can follow. And the philosophical side of the practice has always been a passion of mine, and probably my strongest approach towards the practice, in that I've always been drawn to it because it opens up your perspective so you can see things with your peripheral vision from multiple different angles, which helps you kind of observe yourself and life from different perspectives, and at the same time allows you to be more strategic and approach things with the least amount of resistance. And so it's very valuable, and there's a lot of benefits. And I think reading a little bit of philosophy every day is good for the soul.
100%. Yeah. And I love that there's a three-pronged approach to this because it makes sense, right? We can't just, it's not just you wake up, meditate in the morning, and then go on with your day and everything's fine. There's going to be moments where people push your buttons and then you have to be active. And then there's the overall philosophical. Thank you for like framing that in that way. I think that's reassuring. What do you think some of the myths are that people have about meditation? And maybe it's just we can focus on the first one. When you like for me, I transformed from I used to use the Headspace app, and that's what kind of taught me how to do it. My former wife was a meditation coach, and she kind of helped me through exercises as well that I used. And eventually it came down to now I pray the rosary every morning, and that's my version of it. And it's much the same to me anyway, because I've had that background. And one of the myths that I dispelled was I was like, when I first started doing the Headspace app, for instance, was, oh, I thought the Hollywoodification again is like, I'm sitting here and I thought it would be nothing is in my brain, and it's like quite the opposite actually of what happens. So that was my myth dispel, and it was actually a way for me to filter the negative stuff, address it, and not let it eat me alive, and not be able to move forward in my day or week or month or whatever. What are some myths that you think the audience should know about meditation that could be helpful for them?
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up because one of the most common things that I hear people say is, I've been teaching for over 30 years now, and I'll have people come in and say, "Oh, I've tried meditation, but it just didn't work for me. I couldn't quiet my mind." And somewhere along the way, people got this misguided idea that
Yeah.
in order to be successful at meditation, you have to reach this state of nirvana where nothing bothers you. And
Hmm.
it really couldn't be further from the truth. I've been very fortunate in my life to travel around the world many times and train with some amazing meditation practitioners from all over the planet. And I've never met anybody who doesn't get distracted. We all do. It's just human nature, right? And so when you can change your mind and your reset and reframe how you approach the practice, you realize that just because these thoughts are going through your head doesn't mean that you're failing at the practice. And when we're meditating, whether you're doing a movement practice or a still practice, if you do that for 20 minutes and during that session you get distracted 50 times, every time you get distracted, you recognize that imbalance and you find your balance again and come back to center. You just got 50 repetitions of being off balance and finding that center again. And if you do that every day, every month, every year, you develop this power and this ability that no matter what comes your way, you're able to recognize it, use your physiology, your mental thoughts, and your emotions to find that center again and not get too far down that negative rabbit hole that takes us all off center.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, 100%. Um, you talk about five regulations that also can lead to a healthier life. Could you unpack those for us?
Yeah, and this is the foundational principles of any meditation practice. It doesn't matter what style you do, these five regulations will help you with anything. And they are regulating the body, regulating the breath, regulating the mind, regulating the energy, and regulating the spirit. I'll break these down a little bit so you understand what I'm talking about. So, regulating the body is usually where we begin with a meditation practice because it's the one that we can see the most immediate results from. And an example would be think about a time maybe when you're sitting down at your computer and you've been there 3 or 4 hours and your shoulders are rounded forward, you're feeling a little bit lethargic, maybe you're getting distracted, your neck's getting sore. And then another time when the most important person in your world walks in the room and your body perks up and you feel like you're on top of the world. Well, these two different energetic states we're in 100% control of all day, every day. And so, learning how to regulate our skeletal alignment and our muscular tension and our relaxation can play a huge role in how our energetic expressions come out. And a little bit of a deeper level in this body regulation would be maintaining some kind of muscular structure in the body and flexibility, eating a healthy diet to keep our energy levels up, and getting an appropriate amount of sleep every day. And all these kind of things
Hmm.
fall into that body regulation category.
Hmm.
Then we have regulating the breath. And regulating the breath is an extremely deep topic and something that you'll study for the rest of your life in the meditative arts. And in fact, Qigong is often referred to as the science of the breath because there's literally hundreds of different breathing strategies. And within this, we kind of broadly categorize them into yin methods and yang methods. Yin methods are often deeper, more holistic style meditations that bring the energy inward. And an example of this that we all do every day is if you listen to somebody sleep, their natural breathing pattern is a longer inhale and a shorter exhale. And this is the body's natural way of bringing our conscious mind into our subconscious mind,
Hmm.
which is where we are when we're sleeping and dreaming. And so, if we want to emulate this style of energetic expression in our meditations, we can do longer inhales, soft retentions at the end of the inhale, and this will help bring that energy inward which is great for stress reduction, dealing with anxiety, with panic attacks, with boosting our creativity. There's lots of reasons why we would follow this yin path. Then we have the yang side of the breath, which is more aggressive. It's like if you ever had to push your car, you pick up something heavy, your natural instinct is to exhale and put tension in the breath, make the breath audible. And this helps generate energy and expand the energy. And so when we start understanding how to use this breath in our ritual and active practices, we can use it to regulate our physical, mental, and emotional well being throughout the day. And then, thirdly, we have regulating the mind. We kind of touched on this a little bit with distractions during the practice. There's this story that I enjoy about these two old monks, and they're walking down this dirt road after a huge rainstorm, and they come up to this big mud puddle. And on the other side of the puddle is this beautiful little girl, and she's standing there in a white dress and she's crying. The older monk, he hollers across the puddle and says, "Is everything okay? Can we help you?" And she says, "Well, I need to be somewhere, but if I walk across this puddle, I'm going to get my dress all dirty." And so the older monk, he rolls up his pant legs and he walks across the puddle and picks her up, puts her on his back, takes her to the other side, sets her down, and she's off on her way. Well, him and the younger monk are walking a couple miles down the road, and finally the younger monk is just furious and he says, we're not supposed to touch girls, but you did back there at the puddle."
Mm.
And the older monk looks down and says, "I left that girl back at the puddle. Why are you still carrying her?"
Mm.
And how many times in life do we need to get 2 miles down the muddy road before we realize we got to let that thing go? And so
Yeah.
regulating the mind and learning these ideas about how to develop that sensitivity to notice these imbalances before we get too far down the road is extremely powerful in everything we do. And then the fourth regulation, regulating the energy, this is an extremely deep topic and something that we could talk for hours about.
Mhm.
But the basic idea is once we've reached a competent level in regulating the body, the breath, and the mind, we now have the tools to regulate the energy and take it inward, extend it outward, or circulate it in the body that helps us get different outcomes with our practice. And then the fifth and final regulation is regulating the spirit. And this is a very profound idea, and it's the idea that many meditation practitioners will spend their entire life's journey working towards that ultimate stage of really connecting with the spirit. And so, as you can see, by cultivating these five foundational principles, they can affect anything we do in life, and they're part of every meditation journey.
Amazing. Yeah. The what a I- you know I feel like we're in the minority of people talking about number four in particular, which or whatever one, which one was, finding your sensitivity about learning how to deal with baggage and letting it go, right? But still recognizing the baggage. Very, very difficult thing because everybody has that in some kind of way, and you don't realize that sometimes the baggage can blow up if you don't address it. So I just wanted to emphasize, like for me, that was the part that hit a chord very much. What for people listening and they're wondering, well, how often should I meditate? What do I know? What is going to be the best practice for me? Where should they start their journey?
Yeah, so this is a very important topic, and through teaching for over 30 years, one of the most difficult things that I've had to do is show people how to really integrate this stuff into their life so they can get the most success from it, because it's hard to make those habit changes in the beginning, especially when you don't really understand what it is you're doing or see the benefits yet. And so I've come up with three considerations that I like people to take a little bit of time with when they're beginning a practice. And what I found is if they really do this and put some heartfelt thought into it, they're a lot more apt to be successful with the practice. And the first one is thinking about, why are they being drawn to the practice? Do they want to improve their athletic performance? Are they looking to deal with a stress disorder or improve their health? Do they want to stay mobile into their later years so they can watch their grandkids grow up? Whatever that is for you. And then once you have that, think about 10 or 20 things that are going to be positively affected by accomplishing this goal, and really spend some time with this. And then I want you to flip the coin and think about 10 or 20 negative things that will happen if you don't accomplish this. And in doing this, we develop this ability to have a reason and a motivation and energy. So in those times when we don't feel like doing the practice, we're like, hey, I've got a purpose here. This is the reason why I'm doing this. The second thing is understanding consistency. And meditation is all about being consistent and planting that seed so you see the fruits in the future. There's this tale of this old stonecutter who was very well known all over China. He created these beautiful animal sculptures and with such detail that everybody knew his work wherever he was. And he'd have people travel from all over the country to come live with him for a few years at a time and study his work with him. Well, every morning, the stonecutter would go down to the river and he'd start his day off meditating by the river. One day after his meditation session, he's walking along the river and he had this profound vision of this big 6 foot tall jade mystical Chinese dragon. And he was so taken by this dragon that he decided this was going to be his next project. So the next few months, he's looking all over the area, looking for this perfect piece of stone to create his new sculpture. Finally, when he found it, he brought it back to his place and he spent the next few days just studying the rock and trying to feel the energy and visualize how this dragon would appear in the stone. And when he finally began to start working on it, he carefully placed his chisel on one specific place and started tapping with his hammer hundreds, if not thousands of times a day, the exact same spot, and nothing was happening. A few days went by and still no change. A few more days went by, and his apprentices started wondering, should he try something else? They kind of
Hmm.
started second guessing him, and he kept away at it. A few more days went by, and finally he tapped the rock, and this big section came off the backside, creating this nice, smooth, slightly curved line that was soon to be part of the dragon's back. And one of his apprentices who was watching said, how did you know that that strike was going to break the rock? And the stonecutter said, it wasn't that strike that broke the rock. It was the thousands of strikes before it that broke the rock. And with a bit of a discouraged look on his face, the apprentice said, but I've been watching you and there was no crack. There was no sign of change. Why did you keep doing the same thing? And the stonecutter got down on one knee and he felt the smooth line that he just created. And he said, every strike was not wasted. It was through that repetition and consistency that the stone was changing beneath the surface. And not only was a stone changing, but so was the one who wields the hammer. And the reason why I'm so connected to this story is that it's so closely related to the meditative arts, and that we're practicing these sitting practices, standing movement practices, studying these philosophical concepts. And oftentimes we don't see the change day to day, but it's through that consistent repetition and that foundation that we're laying that we're setting all the ability to have these fruits later in life. And so understanding this consistent effort is part of it from the beginning is very vital. And then the third idea is you have to have a guide. This is a very deep topic, and there's so many different ways and distractions that you can get caught up in. People think that they can go onto YouTube and follow the millions of videos out there and develop any
Hmm.
kind of depth in their meditation practice. They're going to waste a lot of their time. I've had students come in here to the academy who have been self-taught and they've been studying for 15 years sometimes, and they'll see somebody who's been following a guide that's only been here for 6 months that's further into their practice and has more understanding of what's going on. And our lives are short and your time is valuable. Having somebody in your corner to help point you down the right direction is essential. And so having a good why and understanding the idea of consistency and having a guide, if you do those three things, you're so much more likely to be successful with the practice.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the guiding part of it. You have a program called the Yielding Warrior Program, and it's different than other meditation programs. How is it different? How does it work?
Well, we teach people how to build an evolving life practice with the meditative arts. So it's not focused on any one specific idea. We talk about the different paths that you can follow with a practice, and then we integrate movement practices, breath work, still practices from sitting and standing meditation. We study philosophical concepts, and we learn how to build a changing, evolving practice and integrate it into your life and make it kind of, the way you live rather than something that we do once in a while.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, I like that. People need choice, and I think that's one of the things that would help them move into this arena. Um, Jeff, you've been phenomenal. Everything I had hoped for is as far as a guest, and particularly in regards to meditation. Thank you for being here. I have two questions that I ask every guest as we wrap up. We're coming up on the half hour. First one is knowing what you know now, and if you could go back in time to when you first started practicing and teaching the meditative and martial arts, what is one piece of advice you'd give yourself?
I think in the beginning, when I first started teaching, I was very much into the external arts more so than the meditative arts, even though it was part of my personal time and I did see the value in it. I think that if I could go back and do that, I would have let myself know that, hey, this is the path that we need to follow the strongest and put the most effort into, because there's so many life-changing benefits from this practice, and through the years I've had thousands of students come through the academy and online, and hearing hundreds of stories of how the meditative arts has positively influenced people's lives and
Yeah.
seeing the change that it can make, it would just motivate me to really try to get that message out there sooner.
Yeah, I love that. That's a lot. A lot of folks I interview, they're entrepreneurs like you, and it's an overwhelmingly big through line that I hear is like, I would have just started earlier. I would have done more. And so I appreciate you sharing that because I hope that resonates with people who are thinking about starting. It's like whatever they're doing, just do it. Get a good start on it. Jeff, where can people find, follow you, and get in touch with you if they want to learn more about your services and what you do and the book?
Yeah, so you can go to theyieldingwarrior.com. We have our online program up there. You can do a 2-week trial and kind of see what it is and how to integrate some of these practices. We also have a teacher training program up there that's targeted towards martial arts studios and yoga studios, teaching them how to target a different demographic and take time to utilize some of that empty space in their academy, because these meditation classes are most used and we're most busy during the day when a lot of those studios are kind of have an idle time. And so this is a way to build that program within your business. And then also, if you're interested in getting a copy of my most recent book, you can pick it up on Amazon, or right now, if you go to theyieldingwarrior.com/book, you could get a free copy of the book. Just pay for shipping and handling. We'll send one out to you.
Beautiful. Jeff, thanks so much for your time today. We really appreciate you being a guest on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.